Hi, hello, and how are you? That's right. It's the coach, Scott Fields, and welcome to a special edition of the Coach Scott Fields Show. So come on in and stay a while, and just know that we're going to enlighten you and bring awareness to a serious situation that my guest and I are going to share with you tonight. That's right. The Rockwell timepiece says it's time to start up with another edition of the Coach Scott Fields Show, and I'm proud to be a brand ambassador for Rockwell. So go to rockwelltime.com and use the code Coach20 to receive 20% off of any of the merchandise there on that website. Like and follow the Coach Scott Fields Show on Facebook. And remember to hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form tonight, I say turn that knob up because Miss Poppy is going to take you on a journey that is going to move you and want you to connect with what's happening around the world. Watch us on DBTV. That's right, one of the fastest growing TV networks on TV. Thrilled to be associated and know Miss Poppy through DB. So that's going to be fun. Our show airs Monday through Friday. We're also on CSTV and also the Rewind Sports 60. So without further ado, trust me when I tell you, you're not here to hear me. You're here to hear this fascinating story that our guest, Miss Poppy, is going to share with you tonight. Poppy, thank you for your time on such short notice to come and be a guest tonight on the Coach Scott Field Show.
Of course, it's absolutely an honor to be on your show and especially to create awareness. And thank you for helping me create awareness towards this issue.
Yes, and I'm hoping that our viewers, I know that when they hear your story, they're going to be moved. I feel they're going to be empowered. And most importantly, I hope that they're inspired to not only view and listen, but to act and act by sharing this content because I feel like the more voices that we get involved in this, we truly can create change. But let's build awareness so that we can create that change that's so desperately needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Change that's
Poppy,
so different.
I, gosh, I can't even introduce you well enough. I mean, you've been an investigative reporter. You've worked with ABC. You're a female motivational speaker, which you're amazing. But you're also a former sports broadcaster. And of course, we're all about sports, but when we can use sports as a platform to build awareness to what you are aware to, it's a win-win situation. So take us through that, Poppy. I mean, your Persian roots, but tell us a little bit about you and your background and what brought awareness to this serious, unjust situation that's happening.
Of course, Scott. So I was born in Tehran. I was raised in Brooklyn, New York. And I was taken back to Tehran at 16, a 16-year-old teenager, very Brooklynized. So I was trying to get in touch with my Iranian roots and also to get to know the culture better. At 18, I was hired as the sport reporter for IRIB's Shabak Khabar Channel 6. And through that time that I was there, I got to understand the culture that's within a state-run government television institution and also meet so many amazing people there, meet so many of the Iranian athletes. I came with the Knicks in my head and the Mets and the Yankees, and now, and might I say the Rangers, and now and now I'm seeing the Iranian national soccer team, which is called football there. I'm seeing weightlifting and chess players, and they're fabulous and so talented. So I got exposed to a whole different world and kind of sport world where it's so different from the United States. And then, of course, the European leagues and the Bundesliga and the
Right.
English Premier League and so forth. But I was very fortunate to get in touch with them and get to know the sport players, and the type of culture that is for the men's sports team and for the female sport team. And please keep in mind that as a female reporter, I could only report on particular things because I am not allowed to go inside a stadium. I am not allowed to, look some of my subjects in the eye while I'm reporting. So I had restrictions, and mind you, coming from an American background that I did, I wasn't aware of all of them. When Women Life Freedom, the protests started happening in 2022, and a lot of the sport, everybody was affected. And my heart goes out to everybody. Obviously, I'm an Iranian. I'm passionate about my country. I love my culture. But when I saw they were arresting athletes just because they're standing with the people and they're echoing, that these individuals want their freedom of expression, and it took me to a different level that I had to speak of as a former sport journalist. I got my start in my journalism career in Iran in the field of sports. I could not stand still. And, one of the football players right now, because he stood by the people, he is imprisoned, and he's been sentenced to a very long prison term, which is, I believe, 30 or 26 years. He's only 25. He's very young. And a former karate champion was executed just last week because he also was accused of standing with the people in some way, shape, or form. A lot of these are happening, and if God forbid anything happened to our Lakers and stuff, imagine what now they're happening to these. We don't have a lot of sport figures. We don't have a lot of Olympic athletes. Special people rise to the occasion. They put a lot of their heart and money and their time into it. They get ready for the Olympics. I just finished a sport documentary, and the female athletes, they're abused mentally, and they're just terrorized on a mental level. And even when that happens, these individuals still manage to get a silver, even with that kind of mental torture. So imagine what kind of an athlete has to rise above the other athletes as far as competition goes, but also on a mental level to kind of like gray out that area that if my scarf goes back while I'm weightlifting, I have to be careful that my scarf doesn't go back. They have
Right.
to really pay attention to that kind of stuff, in addition to all the other stuff that the game brings, or the
Right.
sport brings.
Thank you for shedding light on that. And I'm going to circle back to some of that. I just want to share that I can connect with this because I too have spent time in the Middle East, as I was actually the head coach of Al Ittihad in Saudi Arabia. And I was able to see a culture and observe a culture and live within a culture that is very male dominated. So I understand when you tell me, the differences that you had where you couldn't look people in the eye. I can remember my general manager as I was driving with him to the arena for a game, and all I did was wave to the children in the car in front of me. And he slapped my hand and said, "Coach, no, don't do that, because if the husband thinks that you're trying to contact or speak with the female in the car, it's your word against his, and you could be beheaded, and we can do nothing about it." And I was in shock and I was in terror because I was like, I was just trying to say hello to the children. But I also wanted to speak on to reinforce and reiterate what you shared. When we would have games, I can remember going to a soccer game, football, and 70,000 people jumping and chanting, and not one female was in the arena. Our basketball games, no females were in the arena. So I empathize and understand that because of the culture, even with celebrations, if we would go to a restaurant, the men would eat upstairs, and the women of the wives would actually eat downstairs. And again, there was no contact. So I just wanted to reiterate that it is such a different culture. It is very male dominated. Women, I hate to use the word oppressed, but it is very submissive for the women there. So I can't imagine the adjustments that you had to make going back into that culture to try to do your job effectively as a journalist.
Yes, exactly, Scott. I mean, you basically nailed everything that I want to express, is that it's, one of the interviews with one of the female taekwondo champions was that she was so hungry after a workout that they had done, And they told her, no matter how hungry you are, the men eat first, and you're not allowed to go into the restaurant. And this girl was on the she was on the borderline of fainting, and they did not permit her to go into that restaurant until the men, and mind you, it's not like we say 6 to 6:30 finish up because we have the next batch. 6, and then they sit and then they talk, and then they do all that, and then the woman could enter and eat. And in the whole process, there is no woman to walk to eat. We have to take her to the hospital probably at that point.
Oh,
So it's very disturbing. Women are second-hand citizens, but when it comes to the world of sports, they're doing the same exact sports the men are doing. They're putting in the same energy. They need the same intake because they're putting a lot of sweat into their sport. So what kind of difference is there? It's the same body, the same blood circulation, heart, lungs, breathing. There's no
right.
difference.
Yeah, and they need the nutrition. And I can even remember during the Hajj period, and then also Ramadan, that they would fast during the day, and then just were allowed to drink sips of water. So to know that as a foreign coach going in and to adjust to accommodate to help the athletes was also challenges, but also the prayer calls, because in the Islamic world, when the prayer call came out, everything stopped. We could be in the middle of the third quarter of a game that was tight. Everything stopped. They would go, kneel down towards Mecca and have their prayer time.
Yeah.
So I can remember those times and thinking, oh my goodness, this is just a different world. And we had to adjust, and I wasn't going to make change. I had to adapt to what they were doing. So I want you to kind of speak on that as well, Pop, because I know most of your interviews during this time you were probably doing during Zoom. How comfortable were those athletes speaking out and sharing their experiences with you? And how hard was it for you to try to get them to be comfortable enough to share those stories?
Scott, after the Women Life protests and these athletes currently living in exile, you come to the point that you say, if I don't speak up, there is no change that will happen.
Right.
And the regime uses fear as a tool to attack these individuals. They're now competing under a different flag of a different country. So I think they have come to the conclusion that if they don't speak up, things will never change. We will
Yeah.
never be able to go to our beloved Iran and compete for Iran and bring medals back for this beautiful country. So I think they got to the point that they wanted to speak up, and also because of the torture that they had endured, they just wanted to speak up. It's very hard to live in exile after you have a home. You come from a very warm home, your mom, dad, your coach, your own country, and you're making it there, and now you're living in exile. You don't know the language, you don't know the procedures, and you have a love of this sport, whether it's canoeing, whether it's taekwondo, and these athletes persevere. That part of their athletic thing, it also takes them into their human soul and mentality, and they say, you got this. You could take yourself through this change and transformation. So in answer to your question, I think they had felt that, and they were ready to speak up when I had approached them. And I was very happy that they did, because right now we're trying to gain more awareness, especially in the sport world, because these athletes, before they're athletes, they're human beings, and they have the same needs and wants and feelings as any other person does. So the fact that they're in prison or they're arrested, it's just very unethical, very unjust, excuse me, not
Right.
unjust in every single way.
Right. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. I'm trying to understand, because I've observed it, because when I was in Lebanon, we were a team of champions. So we played champions from other countries, and we played against Iran, and we played against Iraq, and we played against, other countries there. Uh, and to see them trying to compete at the highest levels already causes a strain, but to have the mental abuse and the mental anguish and the pressure to compete under that regime, to be able to compete at a level and have a certain standard, I can't imagine what that does to you, because stress and anxiety will not allow the body to perform at the highest levels. So to have the government putting stress or pressure on these athletes, and especially if they spoke out where they're going to threaten them or threaten their families, I mean, that just compounds how much harder it is to compete at that high level.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you think that it's a younger generation now that is just becoming more comfortable to speak because they've seen so much abuse, and human rights violations, that they're like, okay, whatever I have to do to make it better, I'm going to speak out? Is that the feeling you got when you were interviewing these individuals?
You know, Scott, not only is the torture in a way that they're fed up with it and you don't want to see your own countryman die,
Yeah,
but there is no road to success. How can you want to be genuine and you want to be authentic in the path that we all have our own journeys, we all have our own paths. We want to stay genuine, we want to stay truthful to our paths. And that's one part of it. And then another part is that it's a dead end.
yeah,
I in faking it till you make it, but in a way that you're faking it with the road of religion and trying to say I'm a firm believer, but you have your own beliefs and your own thing, but you have to say that no, I believe in what you believe in. And you're basically faking a very important part of you're putting a part of your authenticity of your soul under question mark here.
yeah.
And you're trying to get a medal that, if God forbid, your hair shows and might be taken away from you. You might be thrown off the team because
Wow.
your hair was showing, or you took a picture with a reporter and your sunglasses were, where your shades were on top of your head.
Right, right. And I just can't imagine being a female athlete trying to perform at your best, knowing that those types of restrictions and mandates are placed upon you on top of that. Talk about the documentary that you've done, the Women, Life, Freedom, and Athlete Abuse, because I feel like if we can drive traffic to that documentary to also build awareness, please speak on that, because it's a wonderful piece.
Right. So the documentary is a 20-minute sport piece, and I've interviewed Olympic athletes that have been kicked out of the team for various reasons, very reasons that are far beyond our imagination, let's just say. And it's we're doing a screening at Pepperdine University on February 22nd, but nonetheless, we will be doing live on that date, February 22nd at 5 p.m. Pacific time. But we also will be putting it on YouTube. It's labeled
Wow.
Women, Life, Freedom, Athlete Abuse. And obviously you're going to say my name and last name under. So it is produced by myself. And it basically shows what's going on. Why am I making this such a big deal? Because it is a big deal.
That's right.
Because Messi doesn't play under this stress, because no one, because no one, Dwayne Wade never played under this stress. No one
Right.
should be under this stress, especially when you're an athlete, your body is performing, like you said, at such a high level. Your mentality needs to be like, I'm going to win this game. I'm going to try my best to win this game. I'm going to, teamwork is, for the dream team and stuff. So
Yeah.
you have to stay positive.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, and I'm glad that you mentioned those names, but I'm trying to think too, parallels, like the WNBA athletes. And we just had a gal, who was detained in Russia, who was brought back, and a lot of awareness was built on that. And I hope that people, when they hear this conversation, feel that same connection and want to create change and want to make a movement, because we can if we take action. And so the fact that you have grabbing the bull by the horns here and to tackle this human rights issue, I think is wonderful. And I wish more people had the bravery, had the courage to do what you're doing. Because think about Elisa Leslie, who played for the LA Sparks. Think of a Candace Parker, who now plays for her hometown team, the Chicago Sky, and was MVP. Imagine them trying to play under the same scrutiny and play under the same rules that the women in Iran are trying to play under and perform under. I think it's unfathomable. So hopefully we can get individuals like that to jump on board and be a part of this movement that is so, so powerful and meaningful. And I'm so glad that you have this passion and purpose to make these changes.
Thank you, Scott. These when you work in an industry, you develop friendships with people, and when you see them, friends are not friends. When you see someone hurt, you want to fight for them, but especially when you see, oh my God, this is the world I used to work in, and these are all people that I knew, and what's happening. And although some of them are new football players that I don't know, but many of them are oldies, and I have met them, of course, with certain restrictions,
Right.
because I worked under their, IRIB, but I, they're family to me. All of
Yeah.
these guys are family to me, and it hurts me when I see what's happening, right? It really does. And if I can make a difference, I would be happy to use my platform, my energy to do so. And hopefully I will,
Yes.
and I can.
Yes. I, let's that we still have some time here, and I want to dig deeper into this. There was a young lady that was mentioned, and please correct me if I mispronounce the name because I don't want to do that. But the Masa Amini, talk
Yes.
talk about her and her specific situation, because to me, when I hear that, it's almost like I can't even imagine that type of brutality happened to this young female.
Right. So this whole movement started from her death. Her name is Mahsa Jina Amini. She's an Iranian Kurdish 23-year-old woman that was vacationing in Tehran, and her hijab, and hijab is because we all have to wear scarves in our head. Her hijab was pulled back, and the roots of her hair, and her hair was showing. And so, they took her into custody, and eventually they beat her to death, to the point that when she was taken to the hospital, she was pronounced dead. And 23 years old, not really innocent. And then so many girls followed in her footsteps. When I say footsteps, meaning they were also sentenced to death because protests started, and then they were captured, they were beaten to death, and you know, some of them were pronounced, oh, they fell from the top of the building, it was suicide. No, it wasn't suicide. You take them, you torture them, you rape them. And these are young girls. How much energy could a young girl have when you're beating them as such, and raping them as such, for that matter?
Just
And
for something as simple as a little bit of hair showing, that the police go and detain them and beat them brutally to death. And I want to say that again, to death. She lost her life at 23 years old just because a little bit of hair was showing. I want that to sink into the viewers, because again, that seems unimaginable where we have the freedoms that we have here in the States, but she was beaten to death.
yes,
Oh,
precisely. She was beaten to death. I mean, I think all the Iranian diaspora that are not in Iran, where it's a we have come together in a sense of unity, because this has got to stop. We've been under this regime for about 43 years now, and no one has the right to speak up, because you cannot. You
right.
are not allowed to express yourself.
Yeah.
And it's been a global upheaval and unity between all the Iranians, whether you're of a different religion or half Iranian and your other half is of a different um, nationality, but everybody is right now working together to create awareness. I'm zooming in on the athletes. I'm zooming in on everybody, but the athletes are included. And these young children at 7, 10 years old, they're being killed on the street. I mean, that's very sad.
Oh, it's, like you said, enough is enough. And, you talk about death of a young gal, you know, for something simple as hair showing. I mean, you also mentioned stories of incarceration of athletes because they did speak up. talk about, what was it, a soccer player who was incarcerated and now, I mean, for more than a quarter century, which is going to be, probably half of his life, but living in that jail cell. What is that going to do to his spirit and to his soul? And what hope can we provide for him just because he did speak out? I mean, can you speak on that?
Sure, he was a football player, and they arrested him for standing with the people in the Massa Amini protest, and then they sentenced him to a long prison sentence. As far as the number, I believe it's 20 or 30 or even 36. It was a long prison. It's a very long prison sentence, and even with Elnaz Rekabi, she was the rock climber that during the protest, she very courageously took off her scarf, and she competed in the competition. But they told her that you have to apologize, you have to say that the scarf fell off, and then when she returned they had taken her phone and her passport. And upon return to Iran's international airport in Tehran, they told her, you're going to go and say this was a mistake, and I completely support it. And now she's living under house arrest in her hometown. And believe me, her career is forever damaged. I don't know, this is a very championship rock climbing. And when you have hopes and you can't pursue it, and you're at such a young age, she was the only female athletes, because I've interviewed many of them. She was the only one that had the courage to do this. A lot of the other athletes wanted to, but they were always afraid.
Yeah.
And now she's suffering the consequences of it. And who knows if she will be able to pursue her career.
Right, right. So, I mean, again, we're talking about death. We're talking about incarceration. We talked about, the physical abuse. There was also a story where one gal was walking in her apartment where there was only other females, and she was also physically abused. Can you share that story with our viewers tonight? Because to me, again, I think when we here in America and people around the world hear these stories, we're going to be like, oh my gosh, enough is enough.
Right. So one of the individuals that I interviewed, she's a Taekwondo champion, and they were in, I might be mistaken about the city. I think it was in Germany. Um, it was a female only hotel they were staying in, and it was in the middle of the night, and she had to go to the restroom. And as she was getting up to go, she didn't really she didn't put her scarf on. Middle of the night, female only hotel. Her coach catches her and says, "Why are you walking out without a hijab?" And she's like, it's middle of the night. And she smacks her in the face, basically, kind of like smacks her in the face, and then calls the committee in Iran, and they immediately sent her back to Iran, and she's eliminated from the competitions.
Wow.
And
And
sometimes
see,
you think to yourself, maybe I wish I didn't have to go to the restroom at that time of night, you know,
right?
or I
Yeah.
wish,
Wrong place, wrong time, got
yeah.
caught, and then now physically abused and now chastised, or character is being ruined. And then she'll probably be, forced into certain situations, which I'm assuming to where, she won't be able to compete anymore because they're going to make her life so hard because of the pressures that they'll put on her just for that simple act of going to the bathroom.
Well, she's in exile right now.
Wow.
These athletes lose hope that they want to continue, because after that kind of tragedy, or mental abuse that they do, it takes a while to recover from that. And then when you recover, obviously, you're losing time. And
Right.
athletes, they have their prime, so you're losing time, you're recovering, and then you're going into exile in a new country, trying to understand the language. By the time you're settled again, you've lost so much time, you don't know if you should pursue this career anymore. So it's just so many variables factored in, and it's just very wrong to
Right.
what they do to these, especially the
Right.
female athletes.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, viewers of the show, listeners of the show, this is the coach Scott Fields, and just honored and humbled to have Poppy Farsijani on with us tonight, sharing firsthand accounts of interviews that she has done with athletes in Iran who are going through some unbelievably unjust situations as humans. And I'm really moved by these stories, and I want to continue to share some of these stories. Um, when you were back, um, and you were going through, some of the cultural changes, what were some other things that you personally were subjected to or learned right away that, you didn't know you were making those mistakes, but because of culture, like looking someone in the eye when you were interviewing them, or, sitting down, you can't cross your legs and can't show the bottom of your feet. So talk about some of those simple things that we take for granted in a country of freedom, that when you were there, that you were no longer, and you did not have those freedoms because now you were back in, your home country.
Sure. Well, from the get-go, when I was entering the station, they would body check me to make sure that I didn't have foundation or lip liner or lip gloss on me. And if I did, they would take it. And Scott, I never knew what they did with that because they wouldn't dispose of it in front of me. So I don't know if they maybe used it for their own personal use afterwards, or they always got, I always body checked, um, you know, very thoroughly to make sure I didn't have makeup in my bag. I was not allowed to wear nail polish or perfume at work. Once I did get a red card for wearing perfume once. And I wasn't, when I was interviewing my sources, I was not allowed to, there's a certain distance I had to keep, which was very, a certain, not the normal
Right.
distance.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't look at them in the eye. There were certain things that I was not allowed to report on, or um, certain individuals, like if men were swimming or something, I couldn't really, go and interview them, obviously. And I was not allowed to enter the football stadium. Once I got another red card for smiling at my co-anchor while I was saying goodbye to the audience, and he was a male. Um,
Wow.
so,
That
really,
just those are just shocking. I mean, to
you
hear that,
kind of
because you're probably
think,
like, oh my gosh.
yeah, you kind of think, what did I do wrong? And then sometimes, my hands, my veins were showing, and that wasn't right. So I had to wear a glove sometimes. So, my veins would arouse a viewer. You don't
Wow.
really know. So
Right.
a lot of stuff like that you don't really think about. You're just doing your job. You're trying to mind you, I was very young. I was 19 years old before I got fired for not being Islamic enough to hold my broadcasting position. So I was very young when I was hit with that, and I didn't understand what I had done wrong
Yeah.
until when we came back to the States. It took a while for me to heal and to recover from
Sure.
all the trauma.
So I got to circle back on that. You said for not being Islamic enough. What does that mean? What does that mean?
When you come to work, you have to wear a certain attire. And when I was outside of work, I was in my, I wore a scarf. I didn't wear a wimple.
Yeah.
But you have to really, if you're presenting them on the evening news or you're reporting, you have to really be that outside in your personal life too.
Yeah.
And my personal life was my personal life,
Yeah.
and my professional life was my professional life. And my personal
Sure.
life was very normal. It
Yeah.
was a very normal 19-year-old girl that was wearing a scarf. And I wasn't very, very into being very religious.
Yeah. Did you have to? Because I can remember in Saudi Arabia, and again, I just keep thinking of my experiences in Saudi Arabia. Expatriates had to live in a compound, and if we went outside of that compound, we had to be also very vigilant and take care and make sure that we abided by common law in that country. Did you have restrictions like that as well, or like when you went out, did you have to have a male companion with you, or were you able to have the freedom to walk the streets by yourself alone?
In my personal life, obviously, I would go to university in the mornings, and then I had, this job, and then I would go out with my girlfriends to a coffee shop. But I later found out they had a spy follow me around to make sure that, for example, how I wore my scarf. My scarf was usually half of my head, so it wasn't really like, covering all of the roots of my hair. And then I always put, a little makeup on. I did wear perfume. I wore sandals. I wore cropped pants under the long coat that we're supposed to wear. And these were very negative points. And my friends weren't very religious either. We all wore, scarves like this, and we wore perfume, or they had, plucked their brows, or they had tattooed their brows, or they had nail polish, very simple stuff. And I later found out that this spy, that he was going around asking the supermarket person if, how does this individual, how have you heard anything about her? And, like, she was like, her father's, an engineer, and blah, blah, blah. And it's a very normal, does she have a husband? Why is she single and not married? Mind you, I'm 19 years old.
Right.
So I had gone skiing, and I guess I wasn't supposed to go skiing for some reason. So
Wow.
limitations like that, and you don't really understand why these questions arise,
Yeah.
because you're really being so innocent. And it was a very sad time for me, because I was really living my life very, not very adventurously. I was just doing what I thought I wanted
Yeah.
to live as a teenager.
Yeah.
23 years.
Yeah, so when I think of that 19, 20-year-old female, I mean, you're talking about grooming and hygiene, simple things to make you feel good about yourself or your self-confidence. And they were putting a stop to all that. I'm sure they were probably even, what did she buy? Did she buy makeup? Did she buy these things? So I can't imagine living under that scrutiny.
Yeah. You're always watched. Well, I found out I was always being watched, and eventually I was terminated. And I was terminated because I really wasn't up to really accepting or changing my, my beliefs are my beliefs. If I want to fast, if I want to pray, those are my personal beliefs, and I have every right to choose them and educate myself on them. And I can't fake it. So for me, growing up in Brooklyn, I think when I entered Iran, one thing that was embedded already within my veins and DNA was that try to be yourself. And I could not change myself and I was very lucky, because we came back, and some people don't have that opportunity to
Right.
come back. So I'm very grateful for that. But a lot of people change and mold to what they want them to be.
Right. Do you still have family in Iran?
Not really, no.
Okay, so most of them have been able to be outside the country and
Yeah.
live their lives and pursue their dreams and aspirations. I was
Hmm.
just curious if you were in any type of fear for any family members because you are being so assertive and proactive to create change for your country.
No, they're all here.
Great,
Yeah.
great. And I think that's wonderful because I couldn't imagine being like, oh my gosh, if I say the wrong thing, are they still gonna, search for me and try to cause harm in any way?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's was there ever a time when you were back in the country and you wanted to use your voice, but yet you felt restricted and weren't able to do your job effectively because they said no, you can't ask these certain questions to these certain athletes?
I was a young reporter. I was getting my feet wet. So I was trying to learn the ins and outs. So I was trying to learn reporting, A. B, I was trying to learn the culture within a state-run television station. And C, I was trying to put all these things together, and also live my life as a teenager. I wanted to explore. I wanted to see Tehran. I wanted to see this country. And, had just gotten my driver's license, and I had all these things going on. And so all these little layers, I was trying to put them together. So it was very difficult for me. It was very difficult for me.
Were you forbidden to drive in your country?
No,
Uh,
no, you could definitely drive. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember in Saudi Arabia, the women always had to sit in the back seat of the vehicles, and the males always would drive. And of course, you always had to have male accompaniment, as soon as you went outside of the home. And I also remember too flying from DC to Jeddah, where I was at in Saudi Arabia. And I remember the women, they had on real nice clothes, whether it was Gucci or Versace, and just very elegant and beautiful. And then, 20 minutes before the plan would land, they all changed. And all of a sudden they became very submissive and had their head down. And I was like, but that was the same person that I've been watching for 12 hours on this fight.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, it was like they had to flip the switch to go back to live in that environment. So I was wondering if you had any of those types of experiences yourself, going back into your
No,
country.
it was exactly the same. Obviously it wasn't,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
wasn't brand names.
right.
Um, yeah, imagine if you're getting on the plane in, I'm just saying hypothetically,
Right,
Austria or in Germany, you're getting on the plane just as I was in New York.
right.
And then right when the plane enters the region of Iran and that area, I changed into my manta, which is that long coat and the scarf. And then
Wow.
vice versa, when I was leaving, I came on board with that. And then as soon as like we passed Turkey and we're over, in the Austrian skies or the Dutch skies, I would get back to my normal self. So
Wow.
yes, it was exactly the same.
See, that's amazing to me, and I appreciate you speaking on that. Before you talked about the regime in Iran. Do you think there's slowly becoming change within the regime to where they're not as hostile and they're not as abusive, or do you feel it's the same as it's been the last few decades?
It's gotten harsher. So I've heard that
Wow.
the hijab laws after these protests, especially, have gotten harsher. They've gotten stricter, and if anything, they have gotten worse.
Wow. Wow. So, and now that, which just means now there's more restrictions, there's more mandates, there's more, you're put into, kind of like a can, and there's only
Yeah.
certain things that you're able to do. And hopefully conversations like this will spark dialogue to hopefully create that change. But what do you feel it's really going to take?
It's going to take a while,
Yeah.
Scott. It's going to take a while, and it's going to take a lot of bloodshed. It's just, unfortunately, it's going to take a lot of force, a lot of blood, and it's going to take some time for
Oh.
democracy in Iran.
Yeah, yeah. So when you say more bloodshed, obviously there's going to be continued abuse. There's going to be continuing deaths. And that's why you're speaking out right now with your platform to try to slowly create that change and have that dialogue. And correct me if I'm wrong.
No, exactly. It's only with awareness on a very, very high level that we could create change in Iran. So it's just, we're in the dugouts, so to say, and we need to create awareness as much as we can so people know what's
Right,
going on.
right. And the thing that you're putting this energy and passion towards this purpose, I'm just so grateful that you're being selfless of your time tonight. We've got about 10 minutes left. Please share other stories or other experiences that would resonate so that our viewers can connect to this story so that way we can share this content. So please kind of have an open forum to share whatever it is that you would like to share to really get this point across.
Sure. First, I want to start with an example. We have a very important example is the blue-eyed girl, which she dressed up as a man. She entered the stadium and she passed all the, security, kind of like the security checkpoints where they check to see if, you're not a girl and stuff. And then she entered the stadium. They found out that she was a girl. She was arrested, and they had a court sentence for her. And this was such a passionate female that she set herself on fire in front of the courthouse just to make a point that we females never have the opportunity to go and enjoy a football game because it's men only, and because we don't even know. Because is it because they're saying they use harsh language within the stadium? Because we go to a Rams game here and it's fine, or what is the real reason why women cannot attend a sporting event? Um, uh, that, and I'm sure many other examples that we don't hear about. I mean, there's so many girls in Iran. They're very energetic. They love sports. They love trying out new sports. So the fact that this door has been closed for such a long time is just, uh, it's just ridiculous. Quite frankly, why? And in my experience, I never did that, but I know a lot of girls that dress up as men. They make sure that the voices change. They,
Wow.
I think it takes maybe 2 days to put the makeup on, and it takes,
Oh, they would go to
they,
all that effort just to
they
be a
would go.
spectator. Oh my goodness. Poppy, that's amazing. So the gal who set herself on fire, what happened with her? I mean, obviously, critical second, third degree burns, but did she
No, she
live?
died.
Oh my goodness.
She set herself on fire and she died. And I know that one of the journalists in the sports sector was going to do a story on this, and he went to the hospital where she was and so forth, but they did not allow a story to be written on this. They said, this is the end of this story, and we're not going to use any more, coverage or video on this,
Right.
and we don't want this to get to more ears in the
Right.
market.
So basically a government cover up to not, bring more awareness to what
Right.
happened. And here this gal paid the ultimate sacrifice just to, try to be a spectator. So again, stories like this, I think people will
The
hear
story
that.
went international, Scott. The
Yeah.
story went international. We heard about it here, but the
Yeah.
thing is, for it to, they just stopped it.
Right.
It just stopped. We were not allowed to get, oh, what happened to the girl? What are the parents of the girl up to? What happened to her family? What are they doing? And
Right.
then, it was just no more stories. She's dead. She was burned and she
Oh,
committed suicide. Boom.
wow. Wow. And again, because these stories are enlightening, do you have more stories of things that you can recall, or maybe a firsthand of account of an interview that you've done that moved you?
I think one interview that I really wanted to get was in the World Cup, and I was it the Australian team or it was a European team that came to Tehran, and I really wanted to get an interview and with the goalkeeper. And I remember I kind of like, for some reason I was not allowed in the hotel that they were staying in, so I had to wait until they got geared up to do their morning jog. And I remember I stood outside in the cold waiting for these guys, or maybe it wasn't cold, but I stood outside and I said, listen, can I just grab an interview? And I'm not going to even talk. I'm not going to even be on film. I'll just put the mic, and my hand's not going to be, you just talk.
Yeah.
I'll say the question, but obviously I'll edit it. I'll crop the question. So I'm not in any way, shape, or form with my female self in this, but I really want to get this interview with you. And I did, but it was it was, I don't remember who it was exactly, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was so young. But I managed to get the interview, but I never put my name on it. So they're
Right.
like, who got this interview? Who was like at 4:30 a.m. by the hotel? Like, what reporter did this? And I said, oh, I don't know.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So again, talk about the importance of February 22nd, which is a Wednesday at 5 p.m. at Pepperdine University. What are we hoping to accomplish with that platform, and who all can come and attend to hear this and see the viewing?
Absolutely. It's February 22nd. It's at Pepperdine University in Malibu, California. The platform will be we will be screening the documentary, and we will have notable sport figures hopefully attend this event along with political figures. We've reached out to Dianne Feinstein, who is a California senator. We've reached out to Alex Padilla, another California senator, Mayor Karen Bass, the new mayor of Los Angeles, Governor Gavin Newsom's office. So we're trying to intertwine political figures along with sport figures. If hopefully we could get some notable ones from Major League Soccer and basketball, Warriors, Clippers, anyone that could help influence and create awareness. Like I'm just throwing names out there, the Stephen Curry, or with, I don't know, Dwayne Wade, maybe, I know it's basketball season, but I actually looked at it's the All-Star game. So hopefully they have a game with the Lakers on the 23rd. So 22nd is open. But if, any sports figure that could help raise awareness towards this, especially, the David Beckhams and the soccer players and the Messis, they could really, especially in the world of soccer, they could help, the imprisoned football player currently in Iran, and we could really create more awareness
See, and again, I think this is wonderful. And please, everybody who takes the time to hear this powerful interview, please share the content, comment on the content, reach out to friends that you feel may be in a position to try to help this movement and create the change. Because I'm with you, Poppy. I believe enough is enough. And as soon as I was made aware of it, as you know, I'm like, oh my goodness, what can I do? Let's have you be a guest on the show. Let's try to, use our resources and pool our resources to continue to build this momentum and awareness to create this change, because change is needed. It's not just political. I mean, we're talking about human life, at jeopardy, and the unjust treatment of these athletes. So, we've got 2 or 3 minutes. Any closing statements that you want to make, Poppy? Because again, I'm just so honored and humbled to have
Thank you.
this platform to allow you to come on and share these unbelievable experiences for everybody.
I would just, first of all, anybody that's listening to this, thank you for listening to this. This could happen globally to anyone, any woman, any man, any athlete. My Poppy Farsijani is my Instagram handle. We did a special coverage with KBC Eyewitness News in Los Angeles last week about the Olympic athletes that were abused. If you could kindly just spread the word, share it with your platforms, tag these football players. If you do know them, please let them know about the February 22nd event. Let's gain more awareness. Let's blanket social media. At the end of the day, you would never want this to happen to anyone, let alone your friends. So if we could create awareness, that would be so appreciated. And the way that we could do it is, if you'd like to go Facebook, Sharon Poppy Farsijani, on Instagram, Poppy Farsijani. If you'd like to put it on the bottom of the screen too, just please share the content that I have regarding the documentary, and let's just let the whole world know that these athletes, it's a shame if they're imprisoned or they're executed. It's really
Oh,
a shame.
it is, and I believe, um, I believe people have a good heart, and I believe people want to help others, but maybe they don't know how. But if they just share the content, and so that way we can create a wave or a ripple effect, that the more awareness that we build, that can gain that momentum. So please, please, please take the time to share the content, and contact friends, make other people aware. Because again, to have dialogue is wonderful, but we need action. And so please share the content to help Poppy with this movement. Poppy, I'm behind you 100%. Anything
Thank
that
you.
I can do, please feel free to call. And I'm just, I'm honored and humbled to have an acquaintance like yourself, a friend. Our relationship is evolving, and I believe in what you're doing is right, and that's why I wanted this to be so powerful for you.
Thank you so much, Scott. I truly appreciate it. And everybody else that has helped me so far bring it to this stage right now. And I'm just saying, I just have immense gratitude, and I hope that I could push it forward and pass the torch. And everybody know that if you're passing the torch to a friend, you're actually passing the torch of life. It's just like, passing it until there's so much awareness that we put, hopefully he's released.
There you go. Let's work towards that. God bless you. Continued prayers for your strength. Inshallah, we will create the change.
Inshallah. Exactly. Thank you, Scott, so much.
Yes. Hey, good luck with everything. And I'm just so thrilled to be in a position to at least help spread this word for you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Have a great evening. Keep up the
Can I
great work.
talk with you afterwards?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right. Thank
All
you
right.
again, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Coach Scott Field Show, and this is a special edition because this is taking things to another level with my friend Poppy Farsijani, and I just truly believe in this. So let's continue to keep the momentum going. Be blessed.
Bye, everybody.